In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my secret money saving strategies that I used to save my first $100,000 by the time I was 25 years old. I'll first start out by saying that my money mindset is to save money wherever I can, all right? So I've always looked for creative ways to save money that people don't normally think about. Obviously, you have to make money to save money. So I will start with a short background of my job history. So out of college, I actually had a really hard time finding a job. I ended up getting an internship at a church where I made $1,000 a month. It was one of the biggest learning experiences I had about how to really budget my money. Yes, it was a struggle for me, but I learned, I swear, most of my budgeting creative strategies in that period of time. All right, so that was 1 year of making about $100,000 or of making $1,000 a month. I was doing several side hustles. I was even still maxing out my Roth IRA. After that, I ended up getting hired full-time by that church where my income went up from $1,000 a month to $45,000 a year. Yay. Which was honestly for a church an awesome job. I worked there for about a year and then I ended up leaving and I went and got a job using my degree. And that increase from salary to my next salary was a significant increase. It was over 50% more what I was making. But the first money saving strategy that I will say is to save in those retirement accounts. For a long time when I was working full time, I always maxed out my Roth IRA. There has not been a year that has gone by that I did not max out my Roth IRA contributions, all right? So I do that. And then for a while, I was also maxing out my Roth 401k with my employer. All right. That was a significant portion of the $100,000 that I had saved at the point that I turned 25. By saving in those retirement accounts, that is at this age, one of the most tax efficient ways that you can be saving and working towards your net worth. In a Roth IRA, you are saving money that's not going to be taxable once you take that money out in retirement, or even in a traditional IRA or traditional 401k, you're not paying taxes on it now, and it's lowering that tax bracket that you were going into. All right, so the government does do a lot of things to incentivize saving for retirement. All right, so use those things to lower the taxes that you'll either have to pay right now or in the future. The next thing about saving into those retirement matches is to take advantage of those employer matches. All right, that is literally free money for you. If anything, just save the minimum amount that you have to in order to get the most match from your company. All right, that is literally free money that is going out the window if you are not saving into those retirement accounts with your employer. That is if you have that option. Not everybody has that option. In my marriage with us right now, I don't work for an employer that has a retirement account. My husband, Noah, does have a retirement account with his employer. So we do contribute to that. And then we also contribute individually to both of our Roth IRAs. And we both have maxed those out for this year. And we keep all of our retirement accounts that are ours. So either our Roth IRA, I also have a rollover IRA that we both keep in Fidelity. That's where we keep all of our finances. The second secret money saving strategy that I have is to save on your biggest expenses. The reason I say save in your 3 largest areas is because if I spend $200 a month on groceries, the max I can save in my groceries is $200. And even then, that means I don't have anything to eat that month. If I have a $4,000 rent, there's so much more room for me to be able to save in that area than in my grocery area. Monthly, there are certain expenses that you guys are gonna be having that come up every month, all right? For a lot of people, that's their rent or their mortgage, that's their car insurance maybe, that may be student loans, all of those things. For me, in my lifetime right now, the biggest expenses I have made are where I went to school, where I live, and also what car I drive. All right, so I'll start with that first one, where I went to school. I personally went to an in-state school. I studied engineering, so I typically find that the in-state schools have a really great engineering program, no matter which one you go to. Because I went to an in-state school, I did get to pay that in-state tuition, which is probably the cheapest I could have found to be able to get my degree. If I were only thinking about money, and if I were to really do it over again, I probably would have stayed home for 1 year, gone to a community college, gotten all of those first level freshman classes out of the way, getting them all done at a cheaper school while living at home. Most states I know have some sort of program with the state community colleges that you can transfer to one of the 4-year colleges in the state. That's probably what I would have done. I would have probably saved even more money if I had done that, but can't win them all, and that's okay. The second thing is where I live. So when I was out of college and I worked at that church for $1,000 a month. I shared a room with somebody, and at that point my housing was actually taken care of because I was only making $1,000 a month. But once I was out of that internship, I was paying rent. It was $500 a month, which I was paying for a little bit until I moved into an apartment that was about $1,000 a month. That was the most expensive I had ever paid for rent. I lived there for about 6 months and then figured out it really wasn't for me, and I ended up moving home, which was a whole other story. And I moved home, and that was when I started my engineering job. And when I did that, that was about 6 months before COVID happened. COVID obviously threw everything out the window. I ended up going to stay with my family. Half of my family lives in California. I ended up going to live in California for 6 months, which I didn't think was gonna happen. I thought it was gonna be max 3 weeks. I ended up being there for 6 months, and then I obviously wasn't paying rent there, and I was also working remotely, so I didn't have any transportation expenses because my car was here, but that's kind of how it went there. At that point, I was saving so much money, like so much money. So much so that by September of 2020, I ended up buying my first house, and I bought that house all by myself. I bought a small little townhome in 2020. My mortgage plus my insurance plus my HOA is all about a little over $2,000 right now. About 600 of that goes to my escrow account, which then pays out my property taxes and also my PMI. I'm very close to reaching the 20% threshold to not have to be paying PMI, which is gonna be coming up in a few months. I don't know how this happened. It was like literally the stars aligned of when I bought my house, because not only was it when interest rates were like dangerously low, but it was also, I also happened to get a house exactly where I wanted to get it, and I didn't overpay. So a lot of the people at that point overpaid for their homes because interest rates were so low. House prices were going higher because people could afford more of a loan because the interest rate was a lot lower. I've made a whole story of how I got my house and how that whole story aligned. I will link it up above if you want to go check it out. It was a crazy story of how I got it. I ended up paying exactly what the house was appraised for, which was like a literal miracle. I will share with you the interest rate, but I'm not going to share it with you until the end of the video. So you have to stick around for the whole thing. But yeah, so I ended up buying this house. I see this house as like probably one of the best investments I have made and hopefully will make. And that is because yes, the interest rate is so low, but also I've been living here for 2 years. My husband and I now live here together. So now it's our home. Not only are we paying like rent towards ourselves really, but a lot of the money that we're paying towards our mortgage is actually money that we are paying ourselves because it's going into the equity of the home. So yes, we are paying a mortgage, but the money is still kind of going to ourselves other than the interest. So I have had the same car since 2016. Before that, I did have a car that my parents had given me that was like our family car, and I brought it to college with me. And then I ended up getting in a car accident and it got totaled, and it wasn't my fault, I promise, but insurance paid out for it and I ended up getting a new car. But I have never been the kind of person that needed a new car every 2 years or something. My family that I grew up with and Noah and I together, we are just the kind of people that we drive our car until it dies. And we do all of our repairs on it. We try and take as good care of it as we can. Actually, Noah's car is soon probably going to need to hit the hay right now. So at that point, we will have to discuss what we are going to do with a car. However, having a car, whatever car expenses that you have, can be a huge part of your monthly budget. I will touch on education. Not everybody is meant to go to college, and that is completely okay. Out of high school, did not go to college. He actually enlisted in the military. He served in the Air Force for 4 years. He started his degree while he was in the military, and then when he got out of the military, he didn't use his GI Bill on the rest of his college tuition because he ended up getting a lot of military and veteran discounts with his school that he ended up getting his school for free anyways. He figured out a way to get his school paid for. Even if college is not something for you, there's so many jobs, so many openings with plumbers, with electricians, with a lot of trade jobs there are a lot of vacancies in right now, all right? So trade schools is an awesome way to get started. They are oftentimes significantly cheaper than colleges. So if you're even a little bit interested in like being an electrician or being a contractor, all of those things as of now are in great need. All right, my third secret tip is to stay on a budget. And by that, I mean really just prioritize what is important to you, all right? There are certain things in your life that are going to cost the same every month. Your mortgage, your rent, or your car, or your electricity or XYZ, all of those things are fixed. There are a lot of things that aren't fixed in your budget. I will stick by what Dave Ramsey says, and that is to stick with a zero-based budget, which means when you're putting a budget together, when you know what your income is going to be at the beginning of the month, knowing exactly where every dollar is going in your budget, whether that's going to saving, whether that's going to groceries or a mortgage or XYZ, knowing where all of that money is going. I personally have literally always had a budget. I started having a budget when I was in college. Some fun money that I had from side hustles and side jobs that I was doing at the time. I used 2 budget templates to map out my budget. I will link both of those down in the description bar down below if you guys want to check those out. But I've used both of those for years to be able to track my budget. I also have several videos about how to create a budget, how to stick with a budget. I will link all of those down in the description bar down below. My 4th secret money saving strategy is just to live within your means. And by that, I mean, don't live by any lifestyle inflation. My number 1 rule is that do not try to keep up with the Joneses. Just because we have the money to do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should do it. We're oftentimes not buying like the nicest clothes. Every once in a while we will buy either something nice for each other or something nice for ourselves, but we don't blow it out of proportion by any means at all. And like I said before, just prioritizing what's important to us. Sometimes clothing is important to us, sometimes food is important to us, but not everything can be so important that I spend money on it. When we got married, we did have to have some very difficult discussions about money when we got married, especially after that first month, because we were spending out the wazoo at that point. I mean, yes, we had been dating and we had communication about money, obviously, because I have my YouTube channel, but we didn't really have communication about like, all right, how do we integrate our money lives and how do we get on the same page about money? Not only were we spending a lot of money, we were also spending a lot of time basically living our own lives and not merging them together. So it took a lot of like trying certain things, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work, and then trying something else. And it wasn't perfect. It took us a little while. I mean, I'm still newly married. It's still something that we are trying to figure out every day. But I will say, continually having those discussions about money with each other has grown a deeper trust in each other. All right, my 5th money saving strategy is to stay out of debt. Specifically, I'm talking about credit card debt. Credit card debt is literally like the killer of all net worths. It is the highest interest rate on anything that you are going to be paying for. Do your best to pay the entire balance in full every month. If you don't feel like you can handle having a credit card, don't have one. Use a debit card. Yes, there are a lot of people who are saying like you're wasting the credit card points, blah, blah, blah. If you can't handle it, or if you don't even want the hassle in your brain of having to worry about it, then don't have it. Everybody's different. If what works for you is just having a debit card, then just stick with the debit card. I'd also say try and figure out a way around student loans. I know probably a lot of the people who watch my videos are past the point of going to college, but there are a lot of ways. There are so many ways of going to college or getting an education, whether that's a trade school or a 4-year college, that don't cost an arm and a leg. Like I said before, my husband still has his GI Bill, which he intends to use for grad school, which is all of his education expenses paid. I'm not saying that everyone needs to join the military in order to get free education. I'm just saying there are ways around being in student loan debt for a significant period of your life. My 6th tip is to go around your house, sell the things you do not need. I guarantee you, pretty much everyone watching this video is going to have something in their home that they don't need anymore. Personally, I'm usually going through our stuff periodically. I'm usually going through my stuff, our stuff periodically. I don't go through Noah's stuff, but I'm usually going through all of our stuff pretty periodically. If I find something that I see that we're not really using anymore, or we don't love, or I don't love, I usually stick it in a pile of stuff, and usually once a month I will go through the pile and start listing everything. Apps that I use to sell are Mercari. Mercari is one of my favorites. I use Poshmark, I use eBay, and then I used to use Facebook Marketplace, but they for some reason banned me from selling on there, and I don't know why. I wasn't doing anything sketchy. I've tried to reach out to them to like restore my privileges, but no one has gotten back to me. So if somebody watching this video somehow knows somebody in Facebook and can connect me with somebody who can help restore my reselling abilities, I would be greatly appreciative. But that being said, those are the 4 apps that I use to resell. My system for that, which I have found to be the most efficient, is that I like I said, make a pile. I go through and take pictures of all of the things, and then I don't usually immediately list them. All right, usually what I do is if I am out and about and I have some time on my hands where I'm not doing anything, but I have my phone, that's when I will list all of those things. Find that that's like the biggest time saver for us. And then I try and do my best to list things at certain prices. I mean, sometimes I price things too high, sometimes I price things too low. I'm really just trying to get things out of my house. Not for me, it's not only about the money or getting the money back. It's about clearing out the clutter in my house, because for me, honestly, more stuff means a more cluttered mind, which means more things I have to worry about in my head, and I just don't need that in my life right now. Like I said, I probably list things, it takes me like maybe an hour and a half a month, and I usually make somewhere around $200 a month just by selling things. And I know people have things around their house that they're not using anymore that they're probably going to donate to Goodwill. Some things do have value, like one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I find that to be very true in reselling things that we don't use anymore. And by selling the things that we don't use anymore, we can then buy things that we do need or do want. My next tip is to automate your savings. Every month, when we go through our finances, one of the first things we do is transfer our savings, our chunk of cash, to our Fidelity account, whether that's in our brokerage account or our Roth IRA. And that's because what I feel like is probably true for most people is at the beginning of the month is when you have the most money in your bank account from all the income made from the previous month. And then the first of the month is when like everything starts getting taken out of your bank account, like your mortgage, your rent, whatever, all those things, car payment. I do not believe psychologically it's helpful to have a large sum of money just sitting in a bank account, especially the bank account that you use on a daily basis. So oftentimes what we keep in our everyday bank account is just the amount of money that we are going to be using in that month. So anything over that, we always transfer immediately to our Fidelity account. My eighth and final tip is one thing I said in my original video on how I saved my first $100,000 is to choose your friends wisely. But the second thing I will also say is to just be honest with your friends. I will say a lot more people are struggling financially than we realize. Noah and I are not the kind of people who go out, we don't drink. So that's obviously a good portion of our money that we obviously aren't spending right now, but we're also not spending our time with people who are doing that anyways. We really have like a very close-knit group of friends that we spend our time with that we feel safe being honest with about our money situation. So I've said this in previous videos, like we had a couple friends, we were talking about going out in DC somewhere and getting dinner, and they were like, yeah, but we're going to have to go during happy hour because money's tight right now. And I just loved how honest they were about where they were at, and I would love to just like normalize talking about money, even though I know a lot of people have a lot of shame about money, including myself, and I have to actively practice doing that, because I think the more honest we are with each other, the more we can come alongside each other and see where each other is at and help each other where we can. And by the way, my interest rate for my house was 2.5%. It's like a ridiculous interest rate. I will never see that interest rate ever again in my entire life. If you enjoyed this video, I think you will enjoy this video, which has even more money saving strategies that I think you will really enjoy. So definitely check that out. If you haven't subscribed down below, go ahead and do so. Hit the like button down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.